Good afternoon, everybody. Say good afternoon, we up? My name is Pastor Carl Jefferson, pastor of Life Change Christian Church here in the city of Providence, Rhode Island, and I am so honored today to be able to share a few words with you on trauma. I've been asked to talk a little bit about trauma. For we don't realize that what we're dealing with in our society today, that there are over 200,000 people that have died due to this pandemic called COVID. There is over 40 some odd thousand people that are possibly due to be evicted. There are children that are living in crisis, not knowing where their next meal will come from. There's over 144 million people today that are living under a livable wage, which has to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Oh, I want to talk about trauma today. Because we talk about the problems, but we don't talk about the things that affects people every day, which is trauma. The statistic says that 1 in 8 women are victims of domestic violence. 1 in 4 women are dealing with an issue of breast cancer. Oh, it's trauma in our land today. And I'm here as a pastor, as a spiritual moral compass for our nation, a moral compass for our city, a moral compass to say that although we may be on different sides, it doesn't matter when it comes to what is right is still right and what is wrong should still be wrong today. And so as it relates to trauma, I want to just remind all of us that all of us are dealing with trauma when a police officer may pull somebody over for racial profiling, all because of the color of their skin, the effects that that may have on a family, on a generation, on a people. Oh, it's trauma. The trauma that one deals with when you're trying just to make ends meet, but you don't know how rent's gonna get paid, and you're fearing that you may be evicted, and you have to be concerned whether or not do you pay the rent or do you put food on the table. Oh, is anybody today with me that can relate to what I'm talking about? It's called trauma. Trauma just doesn't happen by an incident, but trauma has long-term effects. There's 3 types of trauma. One is called acute trauma. One is called a trauma that lasts for a while, like you're grieving for a loved one and it may take time. And then there is a trauma that may last for a lifetime. Could I help you to understand that when an incident happens, it's just not an isolated incident. It's something that affects you for a lifetime, affects the way you see, affects the way you believe, affects the way you think. And today, I've come today because we need to deal with this issue that's creating traumas across our nation and across our land. For trauma has a lasting impact. It affects our economic system. It affects how one grows up. It affects how one sees their life. So then when you say, why is it that people are living in certain neighborhoods and doing certain things? Oh, it's not because they just choose to, but we need to look at the systemic racism and the systemic policies that are informed by our legislators that do not look at the effects of whatever decisions being made, how it can affect our psyche, which can affect our lives, which can create trauma. And so I'm here to encourage you today because there is a word from the Lord. There is a moral compass to be reminded that there is still hope for our world. And so for those that may feel trapped, for those that may feel ostracized, for women that may feel as if there is no hope, oh, I understand the pain that sometimes you go through and nobody understands behind closed doors, and you have to put on something just so that the bruises may not be visible to the visible eye when you go to work. The tears that come and nobody can understand, or you have no one to talk to, but they're bottled up within you and you feel isolated and all alone, depressed, even at times suicidal. All that's trauma that cannot just be wiped away or just act as if it doesn't happen. Oh, am I talking to somebody in this crowd today? It's real. Trauma is real. And we all need to do a little better with understanding that we are no one to judge how somebody else might deal with trauma. We cannot judge just because the way we think somebody ought to do, that's the way it should be done, but you don't know the pain and the issues and the problems behind the scenes of what somebody might be going through. Oh, you don't know the childhood trauma that might exist in one's life. And so why it's so easy to be addicted or to do some things that the law would say should not happen. Oh, but did we look at the root causes of what presented that? For somebody growing up in poverty, if they have to stand on the block just to make ends meet, oh, can we try to understand the roots of where that may come from before we judge a person? Because it just might be trauma in their history. For that one who may feel left out and have to put something in their arm just to make it through the day, can we at least try to understand what the root of the trauma might be before we just throw them away or act like they're nothing to us in our society? Oh, I want to talk to somebody today because we all, in some form or fashion, deal with trauma. We all respond to trauma in so many different ways. And today I just ask that we would be a little bit more sensitive to know, instead of judging somebody, how important it is to take a little time to stop and to listen to someone's story. To try to understand, even if you don't know and can't say, I know what you're going through, but at least to listen to a narrative and to take a moment to understand that if one hurts, we all hurt. One community that hurts, we all hurt. One person in poverty, we all will feel the effects of it. One person dealing with abusive relationships, later we will see the effects of it upon the next generation. Oh, it's real, and we need to be a little bit more sensitive. Could I say this before we do a blessing? Because trauma usually doesn't have a voice to it. Trauma often doesn't have a face to it, but we all live it every day. Whether or not you realize it, but domestic violence can be a physical or psychological, and it can affect any and everyone. Age, it doesn't discriminate. Gender, it doesn't discriminate. Race, it doesn't discriminate. Sexual orientation, it doesn't even discriminate. It may include behaviors that scar, physically harm. It's controlling, deals with all type of unequal power being distributed, and it finds itself in emotional abuse, in sexual coercion. Anxiety and depression and self-worth and low self-esteem seems to develop. All that it's wrapped around trauma, whether it's flashbacks or rage, physical fatigue or headaches. This is what trauma causes when one is dealt with violence and dealt with injustice and dealt with all type of social things that we just so easily can erase. Oh, but do we realize the trauma that it inflicts upon us? Complex trauma, where feelings of being trapped, feelings of shame, feelings of guilt, feelings of just trying to get through the day to get through. Trauma can have lasting effects that we don't understand, that we try to medicate the pain and resolve the pain and counsel through the pain and try to connect with others who might deal with the same type of trauma, but to no avail. We still deal with this thing that continues to seem to trap us and keep us in bondage. Trauma can become a disorder, where we even talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. Like soldiers who come back from war, but they keep reliving, even though they're in a different place, in a different space, they keep reliving the same thing and can't seem to get away from it. So today I want to talk to you about the reality of trauma. And if you're one that's depressed, if you're one that seems alone, if you're one that seems isolated, if you're one that seems like there's no hope, there's no concern, could I say that there is hope today? Through meetings like this, through people caring for one another, through people sharing with one another, through professional help. Oh, there is hope today. And as I thought about the theme, nasty women, I want to just encourage all the women out there who have been told that you're worthless, who have been told that you can't amount to nothing, who've been told that a woman's place is in the home, that's been locked up, that have faced abuse of every form. I want to let you know today, sisters, it's time to use the term that others have used to bring derogatory sense of self. I'm going to use it to let you know that nasty doesn't mean something bad. Nasty means something unpleasant. Then that when you realize that you are done and tired of being sick and tired, when you've come to a point where you're not going to let unpleasant things continue to rule and subjugate and keep you submitted and keep you silenced and keep you quiet and keep you abused. Oh, do we have any nasty women that are ready to be unpleasant and say, I'll be silent no more? Who am I talking to today? Oh, I want to talk to some nasty women today. Nasty women that will say, I'm going to step up and play my part. Nasty women that will say, I'm no longer going to sit with the status quo and just let anything be said and done and go anyway, sit in the back of the bus when I should be sitting in the front of the bus. Oh, Rosa Parks was a nasty woman. Harriet Tubman was a nasty woman. They didn't just stay silent. They went against the status quo. They went against some things that the society said you should do. They said, oh no, I'm not going to sit with the unpleasantries of what you're keeping me bound to. I'm going to get nasty with it. That's what I'm talking about. Don't let nobody define you by a label. If they define you by a label, then you create your own label. How many nasty women that will not stand any longer with just being silent? Oh, I sense they're being raised up in Rhode Island. They're being raised up in Providence. They're being raised up in Barrington. They're being raised up in Coventry. Do I have any sisters that's really willing to take this thing and no longer stand for what you've been labeled by? In closing, there was a nasty woman in the Bible. I am a pastor, so I do have to tell you something from the Bible. There was a nasty woman who they said was caught in adultery. The problem that I have with this is when the lawgivers, the religious folks of that day, brought this woman to Jesus, they did not bring also the man who should have been with her. I have a problem with that because why is it that you only bring a woman who in that time was considered to be marginalized, considered to have no voice, considered to be the low of society? Why would you bring her and not bring the one who you should have been bringing along with her? But because there was somebody that they wanted to trap, I want to let you know it's time to get out of the trap house, my sisters. It's time to no longer just go with what society tells you you ought to be and ought to do. It's time to get out of the trap house. And so when they brought this woman to Jesus, here it is, they thought they was going to trap her. They really wanted to trap him because they knew he was out for the poor. They knew his message was for the ostracized. They knew his message was for the marginalized. They knew his message was for the oppressed. And so they wanted to kill him. So they said, if we bring this woman who by law should be stoned to death, let's see what he's going to do. But they did not understand that Jesus was dealing with some, didn't have no problem dealing with some nasty things going on in society. Matter of fact, when they brought her, they thought that he was even going to stone her, which would have changed the public's opinion about him or what was going to go down. But Jesus was bad enough. He was rough enough. He wasn't scared of the status quo. He wasn't scared of Caesar, the empire, the government. He wasn't scared of the religious orders of the day. Matter of fact, he said he came to fulfill what they did not or should have been fulfilling. And so Jesus, in his badness, got down on the ground and started writing. It's never told in the Bible what he wrote, but by the time he started writing, he looked up, and those that was bringing the woman to accuse her, they fled. And he asked the woman, where is your accusers? Here it is, they thought they was going to catch him and trap him because they knew the law, and if he didn't do what the law said do, they would have him and kill a revolutionary lover who came to turn the world upside down. But Jesus knew what was in their thoughts, and instead of speaking the word of what the law said it should do, he just got down and right. Could I say, my sisters, sometimes you don't have to say nothing. All you got to do is be quiet and let your Jesus fight your battles for you. All you got to do is be quiet and know that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. All you got to do is be quiet and recognize that if God is for you, he's more than a society. He's more than a law. He's more than if you got to have a right pass. He's more than that, and he'll fight for you. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, I know it's new. Oh, I know you've never heard it like this, but I'm going to tell you the truth about Jesus. He got down and he started writing, and he looked up and he said, where are the lawmakers? Where are the religious folks who came to accuse you? He said, really, they came to trap me, but they can't trap the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the revolutionary love that I've come to bring forth in the world. And he looked at the woman and he said, go and sin no more. In other words, stop being traumatized. Stop going with the status quo. Stop doing what man would just want you to do just to fit in, He said, you go. You're free from the trap house. You're free from what society has labeled you as. You're free from this term being an adulterer. You're free. And go and do what you've been purposed to do. Could I say to all my sisters who have been labeled, all of my sisters who have felt ostracized, all of my sisters who have felt marginalized, all of my sisters who have felt down, broken, in despair, all of my sisters who have been cheated out of jobs and low wages. Here it is, a man can make this, but a woman can make that. That day is over. It's time for us to no longer live in trauma, and we're going to deal with this thing. And so as I close in prayer, could I pray for those women who will no longer stay pleasant, but will get unpleasant with injustice, unpleasant with being marginalized, unpleasant with going with the status quo. And so as I close with a prayer of blessings, I pray as the scriptures would have it said in Psalms, God, you're our God. Have mercy. For you are our Lord, a strong Savior. Protect us when the fighting breaks out. Don't lead the wicked. Don't even let the wicked have their way. Don't give them an inch. These troublemakers all around us, let them drown in their own verbal poison. God, pile hellfire on them. And Lord, let them bury in their own crevices. These loud mouths that don't let them be taken seriously. These savages, let them be hunted down. For we know, Lord, our God, that you are on the side of the victims, that you care for the rights of the poor. And we know that the righteous personally gives you thanks and gives you praise. And that's why we can be secure in knowing that you are in our presence. And where the presence of the Lord is, there is liberty, there is strength, there is hope, there is change. I thank you, God, because you're a God of nasty people, and you know how to turn nasty to the benefit of your own good. Can somebody clap your hands, stomp your feet, and give our King of Kings and Lord of Lords all praise? Come on, come on. Y'all could do better than that. Y'all could do better than that. I done took you to church. I done took you to counseling. Y'all should feel a little better today. Clap your hands and stomp your feet and give God some praise. Thank you for having me today.